welcome everybody to the Practitioners Dialogue, where we are going to be speaking about embedding trust in the renewable energy deployment cycle. Over the years, the Responsible Energy Initiative has published principles which became the foundations of how we think of responsible renewable energy. Last year, we published a framework for how projects can deploy energy in a better manner. And today we've released a procurement toolkit that looks at, and also we published a guidebook just last month to really operationalize frameworks and principles to action and what can be done on ground. So really the keywords here are frameworks, principles, and then to action and commitments on ground. And this session is really going to ground that. The objective here is to really translate field experiences that you might have experienced to a few guidance on what trust looks like and what are those processes to build trust on ground. To kickstart, I'd like to first hear from Mr. Khare. So as we know, Khare Energy is really a pioneer in agrivoltaics in India, balancing clean energy generation, productivity, agricultural productivity, as well as rural livelihoods. We'd like to know, from the start, in the initial few days, and even in projects that you might be, thinking about setting up now, when you take this idea to communities and local stakeholders, are there initial apprehensions? Are there questions? Who are these local stakeholders? How do you understand the dynamics? And how do you navigate this to build trust and really secure that buy-in?
Thank you for inviting me for such a great conference, and where we have been since morning. I've been hearing a lot of bright ideas and practical things. See, at the cost of repetition, some of the people might know my story. Coming from a corporate background, starting my career as a software engineer, then working with a bank for a few years abroad. When I came back to do farming back in 2012, I did a lot of madness. I did a lot of experiments with, and I lost almost all my money, whatever I saved from my NRI status in almost 6-7 years. And when I was during all this period, one thing I observed is, I did mushroom farming, I did this capsicum farming, I did dairy farming, and almost all the places I failed. And to fail me, the major culprit was the energy. I was at the mercy of the DISCOM for this 5-6 hours free electricity. I didn't want to take that free electricity. I wanted to pay, but I didn't have the reliable source. So when I thought that one day I'll restart agriculture only when I have reliable energy. And when this PM Kusum came and I started doing my first, it was the first plant of PM Kusum in Madhya Pradesh back in 2021. The real question came from the horse's mouth. My father, who's doing this farming on my 16-acre farmland, first thing he asked me, you do whatever madness you want to do, but do not spoil my crop. And that was the challenge. So I was forced to innovate on design based on various crops. Like we had some goats, so then I had to design a system where I just elevated a little bit and then the goats can go and graze. Then there was a net house, which was now, it was not being used that time, and then I deployed some panels on that. Then we had some concerns from the laborer. They say, no, we don't want to touch these GI pipes, there might be some current when they are going for irrigation. So then I had to again innovate and put some RCC based columns. So basically, if you look at the practical aspect for integrating renewable, first of all, let us remove this misconception that any or all the renewable energy projects are automatically sustainable. They are not. Renewable is different, sustainability is different. So first thing we have to do is build the trust. Trust with the farmer by putting agriculture first, not the solar first. So you have to design the system in such a way. Second thing, I'll tell you again from my example. When I deployed solar pump at my farm first time, nobody believed that it will work because that was the first solar pump in that almost 300, 400 kilometer radius. Again, my father said, you're wasting your money. I installed one more solar pump. He says now he's gone mad. After 1 year, he says, beta, why don't you give me third pump for that particular sector? So then I deployed third pump. So that way, I mean, you have to design the system, you have to engage with the farmer. You have to provide the solution. Farmers do not accept technology. They accept solution, outcome. So that way, you have to take that approach, and that is what we have done. And you have to demonstrate. I mean, initially when I came back, I used to keep the record of all the farm expenses, everything in my laptop, and fancy presentation. I told my father, see, this will happen after this, after 1 year we'll get this much. He didn't believe all those things. More than presentation, once I deployed this, now he's happy to go for some other acquisition of other land and deploy. Other farmers also, they came to my farm. One of the reasons, if you look at Madhya Pradesh, it has currently the highest concentration of agri-PV plant in India. Even despite we don't have any policy on agri-PV. The reason is farmers came, they visited the plant, they saw the benefit. They realized that it's beneficial and they are willing to invest that additional money. Third thing, what I as a Khare Energy, we tried is, we selected the champion farmers. See, it's again like for demonstration. One demonstration cannot serve whole country or whole area. You have to pick the farmers, which farmers, champions who are willing to take the risk. Like when we had the tractor first time, probably it was taken by some jamidar or somebody. But now almost all the farmers are using tractor. So we picked up those right people who have that money plus love for the land, love for the farming. So that is how we are able to eliminate those initial hurdles, and that is what is taking us forward, and we are able to spread this movement within Madhya Pradesh, within India, and now we are going, I mean, last week only I came back from Africa. So we are taking this to African countries also. So this is the approach I have taken, and I think this has been successful so far.
Wow, I think that is extremely inspiring to hear, and in what you said, there are just so many learnings, and the fact that you are taking India's story to the world, I think that is something that we are all very proud of to hear. I'd like to now go to Udyan Singh, and you know, Yanara is really quite international, and you have projects across APAC, but your team in India is, you know, you're just building your sustainability, ENS and EHS team. But we also see when we speak to different developers that, you know, there is a spectrum of how important sustainability and EHS is. So health and safety usually tends to be more strict and ingrained as compared to some softer aspects of maybe ESG. We also see that within teams, you don't always have a lot of buy-in for you know, sustainability teams and the reporting. It's seen as a compliance. But how do you move from that? How do we ensure shared ownership, you know, and to actually, you know, start, because it is the land teams, procurement teams, the business development teams that work on ground, right? And so the risks are there. So how do you at Yanara ensure that shared responsibility?
So, yes, this is a very relevant question in context of Yanara, which is still in a very early stage of development as a developer. So, one simple rule that we have is we don't give that opportunity to the team members that this is a shared responsibility. A simple statement would be like, the EHS team in our organization is a very lean team that does not allow other team members to even think that the deliverables will be done by the EHS team. We are simply the guides for the team at large. It's clear mandate from the senior leadership. They also repeat this time to time, and we keep on guiding them continuously, and they take it forward. And the governance mechanism that we are developing, it focuses on capability development of the team and stakeholder-centric approach in developing the procedures and processes that we are evolving with. A simple example would be, as you mentioned, the land team. Everything starts from there. So the due diligence of the land parcels to be acquired and all, right from the conceptualization stage, we keep on interacting with them, let them know what has to be checked, how it has to be checked. Our focus is more on solutions instead of discussing on the problems. So I would say it is like a solution-oriented approach, stakeholder-concentric approach. We have a system of, say, we call it as a bridging document. Whenever we go for any contract, we invite the business partners and the contractors, and we learn from them how they are delivering, what they are delivering. And instead of enforcing our expectations, we have a long discussion, repeated discussions, and we bridge our expectations. It's more of give and take kind of things. We respect their already evolved systems. We share our expectation, we reach to a conclusion, how things are to be done, and all of that is being done at the principal stage only, like before issuing the contract. So if there is any gap or any difference in opinion, that gets resolved at the early stage instead of getting onboarded and repeated discussion. So as I said, EHS team is very lean. Our SCM team takes the lead in this type of discussions. The land team in their domain, they take the lead. The project team, once the project activity starts, they are the front faces. They always talk about ESG requirements. They always follow up with the business partners and the other stakeholders. We as a HSE team, we are there to help them and support them by knowing what has to be asked, how, if there's a problem, what could be the potential solution, and the solution being given by them to the party with whom they are interacting on daily basis. It is easy buy-in, and that's the approach that we are following. And as Nicole said, we have our footfalls in Asia Pacific region, but India team is the leading team. We have already commissioned a project, and we are coming up with few projects in Rajasthan. So all our SPVs in Australia, Philippines, they are looking towards what we are doing in India, and this gives us a boost, and our management is continuously supporting with this mindset. One thing that we jointly believe is, instead of going for can we manage the issues later, we want to shift our mindset towards can it be eliminated altogether. With that approach, we are slow in taking decisions, but whatever we do, we believe it should be long, sustainable and long-lived. So I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel you pointed out so many pertinent issues. One is that the RE industry is full of contracting, subcontracting, and so on. So managing expectations, especially expectations related to what responsible actions you will take to mitigate impacts, is critical from the outset. But I'm a bit intrigued, and you mentioned, just to follow up, you mentioned that through this bridging meeting, or if there are issues on ground, you come up with some solutions. Could you give us some examples of what those solutions have been that you have implemented on ground?
Few things that come up to my mind as of now is a simple solution like when we are working with two, three different business partners at a particular single project. So simultaneous operations are there. Uh, so simple example is like sharing of resources. For a renewable project in a isolated location, welfare arrangements like every contractor is expected to deliver basic welfare to their worker, like race shelters, toilet, drinking water. So we try to uh, bring on board all the contractors on a common platform, share resources, share responsibilities. We also share the responsibility of welfare for the people who are working for us. For example, a contractor is building a rest shelter for their 10 people, and the another contractor who's working, he has a 20 to 50 manpower engaged. So all of them coming together, we build a bigger and good rest shed, which can be used by everyone. It's a common resource. People can come there, rest, and refresh themselves. So, as a principal employer, we take the responsibility of ensuring regular water supply, cleaning, and also it's kind of shared responsibility, and everyone's happy because everyone, in terms of finance, it's shared. So this is something that a solution we have come up with is. Another is in terms of resources like ambulances and all. Instead of uh, enforcing all the contractors to deploy emergency resources, what we do is we provide the porter cabin. We ask one of our business partner to contribute in supplying the supplies, medical supplies. One contractor takes the responsibility of deploying the ambulance and paramedic. This way, the entire project is getting covered and the responsibility is getting shared. So these are the few things that we are presently doing and focusing.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I think there's a great learning in what you said about shared responsibility and then the enforcement of that shared responsibility also.
Yeah. One thing we keep trying is not to enforce things on on the business partners and on, because if they own the responsibility, it's easy to get it done. So that is the idea.
Is there monitoring of the work then? Of
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
governance will always be a part that we have to play. So we are very consistent in our governance processes. We keep on visiting the sites, do meetings, identify the issues. And again, instead of discussing on what is going wrong, we try to discuss on how we can make it right. And again, we expect the solutions from them only. We motivate them and we encourage them to come up with their learnings in the past, how they have overcome these challenges, because it's a common cycle. The project life cycle is very recurring life cycle. So they have faced these challenges, they have come up with the solutions. Now, instead of forcing our expectations, we try to accept their solutions aligned to our principles. So that's where this whole bridging exercise helps.
Thank you so much. We now move on to Michelle. So you've really, worked across many countries on quite a sensitive topic, which is on conflict resolution. And it's not just specific to renewable energy, but definitely, what are some recurring issues you see when private sector engages with communities? Because everybody does engage, right? There is some engagement, but then there are still gaps, right? So what do you think those gaps are?
Thank you very much, Nicole. And yes, thanks also for pointing out that this is a practitioners panel, but I'm a slightly different practitioner. I am a professional mediator, so what we do, the Consensus Building Institute, is sort of apply skills and strategies and practices that normally you would use in a peace building setting to a very different context, which are sort of complex, multi-stakeholder, technically intensive, joint ambitions involving different stakeholders, or indeed conflict or disputes. So just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit from where I'm coming from. I think we hear from the gentleman who already spoke a lot of very, very, very concrete things, right? Let me just take it one level up just for a minute without becoming too abstract. Trust is core to what I do, right? I mean, it really is the foundation of it. And often we get involved because the partners that are, or the parties that are meant to be working together in some way just cannot do it anymore, right? And so I just want to sort of for 1 second step back and ask ourselves, like, what do we actually mean by trust? Because we use that word all the time, right? But what does that actually look like? And I think that then gets to the gap issue, right? So, I mean, there's various ways in which you can cut this, but let me just sort of cut to the chase. I mean, to me, it's a bunch of things. It's one, you actually know what you're doing. You have expertise. So you do what you do well. The second thing is you have credibility and you deliver what you promise, right? And that one, I think already we're seeing some gaps. Now, I want to say that there is a wide spectrum of practices. We are hearing it here. So, you know, let's just keep that in mind as we perhaps zero in on some things that aren't going so well, right? But if you have a project cycle and you send into a certain area, first the land guy, and then the project guy, and then the other guy, and there is no connection whatsoever with the community between these people, and they don't have what we just heard, right, which is some sort of common foundation with a support system, you're not going to get that credibility from the start, and that is going to be the first step in creating problems for yourself. I then want to go to another piece, which is sort of the empathy and integrity piece, right? Everybody has interests as they step into a project like this. They're all perfectly legitimate. But there is a difference between actually having some authentic interest in what you enter. These are, as you know better than me, there are rural landscapes all over the world generally where these large projects are. It's certainly true in this country, landscape, seascapes. And they have a completely different, it brings parties together in a way where worldviews clash, where lack of understanding of where people come from is really not aligned, right? And I mean, at the risk of you know, giving an example here is the wasteland terminology that is often used in government documents and by companies, right? From their perspective, they drive through rural Rajasthan and that's what they see. What the people who've been living there for a very long time experience is an intricate socioeconomic and cultural system that has meaning for them in a way that doesn't for the people who are outsiders, right? So you've got to sort of authentically kind of step in and try to understand what you're actually bringing, which is a pretty large disturbance in an existing system. And I think that's also where often things are a little bit tricky. One thing to note is that conflict, opposition, tends to be larger in areas where conflict already existed prior, even from a different sector. So it is worth doing a little bit of analysis that isn't the, the which bird is going to run into which cable, although that's also important, but also the, what is the background of this place that I'm going into? I was looking a little bit, doing some studies at Tamil Nadu and where some of the blocks offshore are for wind energy. And some of them are very, very, very close to communities that, again, you know much better than me, but that have a very large and controversial nuclear power plant, which has been a source of conflict for a very, very long time, right? So your understanding, doing political economy and conflict analysis of where you're stepping into and therefore what to expect, I think is one of the gaps that we're seeing. Finally, I think, and people have said this already, but just I want to put a pin in it. There is a difference between compliance, and Nicole, I know you have strong emphasis on this, right? But I mean, compliance and meaningful engagement, right? And I think there is still a lot of confusion around that, right? I held a public hearing and I told them what we were going to do. What else is expected here, right? That is very different from, I'm entering a space that is very different from what I'm used to. We can bring opportunities, we can also bring risks, and let's try to understand both in how we design a project in a physical sense, but also in a benefit sharing sense. How can we make this the least painful or ideally even a little bit more better for the people that are going to be living this for the next 20, 25 years, right? This is not just a brief. So I think finally, maybe one gap is also the internal structures in the companies, the communication lines, and the sort of holistic bringing together different parts, the finance people, the project development people, the land people, the CSR people, and so forth, and actually understand what is the cost of doing this in a meaningful way, and how does that compare to not doing it and then dealing with a conflict in a different way, in court and so forth and so on. So how do you bring that together? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michele, and I think it's wise to build on what you said. And I think while Michele was speaking, we did identify a few of the problems: credibility, lack of a point of contact. But Michele, I actually want to come back to you and really ask you that now that you've identified and laid out these gaps, really what needs to change, in this engagement process that say in India, like for developers, right, and the communities, what do we need to do to bridge those gaps?
Thanks, Nicole. So let me this is a big conversation. So let me just put forward some observations that I've had as I've been looking at this, right? So one of them is there really is a disconnect between the strong call for early engagement and the bidding process and the return on investment of the company, right? In some sense, the call is to do a whole lot of investment in understanding communities, having dialogue, building together, bridging. That all takes time, and it all takes some money and some skill. And that is asked at the beginning. That is most effective at the beginning. But that is exactly when, unless I'm mistaken, the clock ticks, right, for the companies actually having to meet certain deadlines and getting financial penalties if they don't, right? So there's no distinction between which company does this well and which company does it not so well in terms of the penalties that they incur if there are delays. So there's and of course profit, and when does that kick in? So there's a regulatory issue here that shapes incentives in a counterproductive way. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I would love to have that discussion, but to me that is a place that is absolutely needs to be looked at. Secondly, I think pushing a little harder on what actually the solutions are in terms of both the project designs on the ground, and our colleagues here have a lot to say on this, and I hope they will get the mic soon, because that's actually they have really inspiring stories, but also on the benefit sharing side, right? CSR programs obviously exist. They are a form of benefit sharing. Let's put aside all that long debate that we can have about what that means. They are a form of benefit sharing. But at the same time, how are CSR programs conceived and managed? Are they actually optimized to try to deliver benefits on the ground, or are they rather sometimes designed at headquarters quite far away with certain priorities that are not dictated by the community? And hence, you sort of end up with a bit of a mismatch, right, of what is given and what is received. And I would just also there again add the sort of issue around authenticity. I mean, is this essentially a public relations exercise, right? Or is this trying to actually compensate for certain losses in the community and help them through a transition? And to what degree is this only the responsibility of companies? I think that's a very fair question as well, right? I mean, at the end of the day, community development is also a governmental responsibility. So I think some clarity there around how do the various schemes and the government plans come together with distinct company efforts, and how, and this is my last point, generally I think more taking a cumulative view. It seems to me, and this is not only in India, although it seems very strong here, again, I might be wrong, correct me if I am, but that things are sort of evaluated project by project, right? Literally, like the viability of a project here, the viability of a project there, and there is very little stepping back and looking at it holistically and realizing that, at the larger area level, right, the spaces for adapting to one big project, in theory, comes from a different area, an adjacent or space. But if that space also is taken up by another project and so forth and so on, you're kind of starting to begin to run out of options, right? So you have to kind of think a little bit more about how these socioeconomic, cultural systems, pastoralism, traditional fisheries, all these things, how they overlay onto an area that is really widely dominated, not project by project, by certain development goal, development projects. Sorry. And so I would think that having a little bit more of a, not just planning, and marine spatial planning has begun in India, so hopefully that can move a little more in the center of this debate as well, but also companies to the degree that they can, work together a bit more around project design and community investments, particularly community investments at the area level, so that this becomes more developmental. There's also a lot of scientific uncertainty, particularly around water effects and things like that. We just don't know whether in Tamil Nadu there's going to be an advantage of having pylons or not. To fisheries. So let's try to together figure that out. And I think you are doing that, right? Let's not have a battle of experts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and that brings me to Subbu. So, at REI India, we've been developing playbooks to help developers navigate these issues. You yourself have, spoken about quite a lot of problems that developers face, and in recent times, the KHD3 issue. But this is really a very complex problem, right, when it came up, and it's at the intersection of culture, environment, livelihoods. So really want to understand from you, it's not easy, right? It's not an easy problem. And NSCFI has done some work in convening and leading the discussions on this. So just want to hear from you, right? Why are these problems also so difficult? But moreover, that how has NSCFI and played a role in solving or taking a role in, solving for some of these issues. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Nicole. And it's a really good thing to speak at the end, but it's also really bad. Most of the things have been spoken. But building on inputs shared by my fellow co-panelists and your specific question, I mean, I think every problem is difficult today and complex. And particularly, we are having non-teething problems in RE sector today. So on one hand, our growth is exploding, which is a very good thing to witness. But with that explosion, we have an unintended developments on these conflicts. We have seen this evolve over last maybe 6 years. Trees have come now. Before trees, we had birds. Communities are going on. So this juxtaposition of communities, ecosystem, biodiversity, and energy, it's definitely a very complex equation to solve. One major thing as NSCFI we have done this time with caged trees, I'm sure most of you are aware, the tree it has more sentimental value in the communities there, and I'm sure you must have tasted sangri. It's a very delicious food. I stayed in Rajasthan for 4 years, so definitely my favorite. And it was inevitable that some of the trees had to be were in the areas where RE was coming up. So we thought, let us take it head on, be more proactive, because we did learn some lessons from the GIB aspect, and it took us almost maybe 4 years now to arrive at some meaningful conclusion with consent from the Bird Wildlife Institute and the local communities, and of course the RE side. So we initiated a dialogue with the local communities to begin with, understanding what exactly are the concerns. I mean, we have definitely committed to plant more than 1 million trees in next 20 months from today. But that is just part of the solution. That's not the entire spectrum of the solution. One major concern is that it's very difficult to transplant the caged tree. And the tree is almost 60, 70, 80 years old. And you can't just replace that with a new sapling and then say we have done our job. And that we are cognizant of it. So we tried to establish, and I'm happy to share that 15th of May, almost a month from now, we'll be launching our own research institute in the vicinity of the 3 large parks, Bhadla, Fatehgarh and Bikaner, in the center of them, so that we can innovate and try more, in more iterations, pilots on transplantation, so that aspect also is addressed. This is one of the community's main concern that we were able to figure out, and we are acting on it proactively. Then while we were researching, we figured out that there are already 2 research institutes and NGOs in Rajasthan itself, not in that area, who've been successful in transplanting 50% of the trees that were cut down. That was a good example that we were also, it was an encouraging thing for us. So this is one angle of community engagement that is sort of something that we are looking at to begin with in the beginning itself. But when it comes to, when it comes to the fundamental problem, we have seen a lot of tools emerge, including the handbook that you mentioned, the site right tool of TNC and all of these things. There is definitely an increasing, I would not say concern, but increasing appetite from RE developers on understanding all the dimensions of the local situation from the beginning itself, and trying to address them before the project already goes online. Like I said, we are competing with ourselves in adding more capacity, so we can't afford any timeline delays. So it has both sides of the equation. The last point I want to mention is that community engagement also has both angles, right? Pre and post. And very often we don't hear post developmental community engagement stories or success stories, as a matter of fact. But there are many of them around us itself. Yanara has given a good example and their template. I know for a fact at least 4 of our IPPs have set up their own ITIs. Some of them are exclusively training women. There was one IPP where they set up a plant in Gujarat, almost closer to our border, similar terrain as deserted Rajasthan. And the local village, all the women in the village the IPP wanted to train them. And the woman said, no, we can't afford time for training because we have to take care of our kids. So these guys set up a small play school and volunteers who can take care of the kids. So the women can be trained in self-help group activities, including assembly of small solar panels, off-grid systems and all. So this is not a rare example. All of these examples exist in every state, in every IPP operated area of our country. It's just that in the entire scheme of things, we might not get as much visibility from these as we wish. And that's where I'll go back to Michele's point on and my final remark on how the bigger picture is very often not considered, and we always look events in isolation. There were many plants in Assam, and this is a public news, but I'm sure the nitty-gritty didn't come in public, because of some kind of reptiles and some microorganisms that are part of the soil. Two developers consciously decided not to proceed with RE there, and they have taken back the project. This doesn't come out much often, but this happened. The news says the project got cancelled, but the reasons behind won't come out. So I think there is one aspect that I sort of want to resonate here, is that if we are able to highlight those, if we are able to sort of bring that notion of awareness among the community, that is going to go a long way. Anyhow, the matter of the fact still remains, as long as the issues reach a stage of inflection point where it's a bad thing, then only it will come out in public news, including KHD. But the work that goes behind generally doesn't come out. And I think that is where a lot of efforts have gone into, and a lot of efforts from the RE community also should go into. And I'm sure we have learned a lot of valuable lessons on what to do and especially what not to do in the last 3 years, especially in those two states.
Thank you so much. We are running out of time, but I want to have a very quick rapid fire. So if each of the speakers in 10 seconds could just tell us that one practice to build trust with communities, which according to you or the company that you work for is really a non-negotiable. So maybe we can start with you and go this way.
I think we should go with a mindset of land partnership rather than land leasing, and we should think land as not as a vehicle or any other commodity. We should take land as a child, where the school take the child away from mother, and mother, even with heavy heart, she gives away the child. Same way, she knows that after 5 years, 10 years, my child will come it will be a different child. Same way, we should treat the land seriously. This is the situation in India. You have to treat the land with that delicacy, and treat the farmers and the land in that manner. Provide them some kind of engagement. They cannot stay away from their land for 25 years. Why don't we provide, say, some 1% of the land for agroforestry? It's not a barren land. There's no land as barren land. There's no concept of barren land in India. It is being used by farmer or by the goats or the cattle or reptiles. So or there's a temple there, or there's a road which passing to some other area. So engage them by say you provide some 2% of your electricity. Why don't we overload our plant with another 2% and give that 2% to the farmers? They would be more than happy to engage with your plant. So let's build this DRE system in a partnership and manner, and let's engage what others said, that let's bring the CSR from the very first day, from the design and the inception stage itself.
Thank you so much.
I mean, building on what Khare Saab said, for me, one thing non-negotiable is, apart from engagement, I think community ownership, because it's often perceived as some kind of a threat, or a lot of projects get stalled. But the moment ownership is there, I think most of our conflict points that have arisen in the last 10, 15 years, or especially last 6 years, that will definitely evaporate. One example I can give you, in Bikaner, one of the largest parks that will be coming up of 4 gigawatt, 3 IPPs together adopted the ITI, and then they made it all women ITI, and they promised the villagers, it's not a promise, they committed to the villagers that they will hire every ITI graduate from that to operate their plants. In 3 months after that, there was some community issues on the road development that the local legislator and all were having. The community came forward and helped them navigate that area without any problem. So this is an antithesis of what we are speaking so far. So if communities' ownership is invested into the project in all possible areas that they can be taken considered, I think that is something that is non-negotiable, and that is a way forward. Because I always say India is a land of opportunity, but we are running out of land for renewables. So we need to find some ways to ensure that we get things up and running within the next 5 years.
Thank you so much. Michele?
I think show up as if you care, and people can tell the difference. And ask lots of questions, right? When you think of stakeholder engagement not as you going and preaching to people, but as asking a ton of questions. Speak 30% of the time, let others speak 70% of the time, and then act accordingly in line with what you hear.
Yeah, most of the things people have already said, so I'll keep it short. I think consistency and transparency is important. In terms, instead of promising a lot of things and then deviating from the promises, it is the reason why there is a fragile trust between the developers and the landowners that I see as the biggest reason. So whatever we want to commit should be clear, transparent, and balanced enough that it can be delivered. So that will help in a trust building. That's all. I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We now end the session at a very nice note because transparency is really a core value at what we do here at REI. Thank you for your insights and bringing your expertise to the audience here. The dialogue is really not over because we will continue to engage on many of the topics that you have mentioned and really mainstream some of the actions so that it really becomes a standard in the sector. Thank you so much.